Good morning. Good morning. All right. My name is Sandy Meyer. My pronouns are she and her, and I have the joy of serving on your Board of Trustees and to welcome you here this morning. If you are here for the first time, thank you for joining us. We look forward to getting to know you, and we invite everyone present in the sanctuary today to join us for our in-person community time immediately following the service. In the recent rearticulation of which we American Unitarian Universalists hold most dear, we hold up justice as one of our core values. We work to be a diverse, multicultural, beloved communities where all thrive. We covenant to dismantle racisms and all forms of systemic oppression. We support the use of inclusive, democratic processes to make decisions within our congregation, within our association, and the association of the world at large. Now, Reverend Emily Gage will introduce our pulpit guest.
Our pulpit guest today is L.J. Williams. L.J. uses she and they pronouns. L.J. is an aspirant for Unitarian Universalist ministry, originally from Bellwood, Illinois, and now of Orange County, New York. She's a sponsored seminarian and a member of our congregation. Her interests include embodied worship, religion, and revolutionary movements, the history of the African diaspora, and Unitarian Universalism. She's starting her final year at Star King School for the Ministry. They are a longtime Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism community member and a coordinator of a thriving Chicago Blue Haven. She currently serves as board president of Young Adult Revival Network and served as a worship learning fellow at the Church of the Larger Fellowship from 21 to 23. They find renewal in reading science fiction, singing, and family, and we are so glad to have them with us via video today.
Okay, a reminder that today at 11:30 after our service, here is a board check-in. It will be here in the sanctuary and online. There's a link in the e-beacon. We're so glad you're here today. We hope you find this service inspiring and meaningful. I invite you now to take a moment to greet one another, both online and in the sanctuary.
Our chalice lighter today is Matthew. Matthew likes to draw, and Matthew likes the color red. Please join with me in the words of our chalice lighting. We are Unitarian Universalists. This is the church of the open minds, the loving hearts, and the helping hands. We take care of the planet Earth and each other.
Good morning. My name is Sybil Madison. I use she and her pronouns, and I am very honored to be one of your worship associates. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. These quotes from Gandhi and the Apostle Paul suggest that in order for us to create the new world that we want, we must question how we think today and transform right now into who this new world would demand that we be. But what's wrong with the way I think today? What needs transforming? And aren't I on the right side of the fight? In the early 90s, I was introduced to anti-racism and the idea that our systems of oppression are so ubiquitous and normalized that everyone who has grown up in America, and even those who haven't, is affected by them. These new ideas helped me explore how a white supremacist orientation was integrated into my own thinking, like times when I held Black people in the public sphere to a higher standard than I held their white peers. More recently, I've had to question myself again regarding my thinking about reparations. For a long time, I allowed myself to get bogged down by questions like, where do you start? How do you determine who gets reparations? What do they receive? Has it simply been too long to consider? But in the last couple of years, I have visited the African American History Museum in DC and learned about the amount of money made from the fields that the slaves worked without compensation and under extreme duress. I have visited the Equal Justice Initiative Museum in Montgomery, Alabama, and been reminded of how the KKK terrorized Black people who were embracing their new freedoms during Reconstruction, and how the government's Jim Crow laws secured Black people's fates as less than second-class citizens. And just last week, I was in Ghana, where my parents, my kids, and I stood in the Pra River, the same river where slaves who had walked hundreds and hundreds of miles, shackled to each other, took their last baths before being sold, stored in dungeons, and, if they survived, transported in the bowels of ships across the Atlantic to their owners. This wrangling I was doing with the merits of reparations was conforming to the pattern of this world and unintentionally supporting the ideology that undergirds white supremacy and a system of beliefs that suggests that Black people's lots today are mostly of their own making. When I look at the huge disparities in every imaginable outcome between Black people and everyone else, except for our Native American brothers and sisters, I must reflect upon Black people's journey in this country as a people who were brought here by force, enslaved, emancipated, but by law denied land ownership, education, and full citizenship, and only provided access to full rights 60 years ago after having survived in conditions that were now immutably inferior and spaces almost wholly segregated. If I do not acknowledge that history, and there are places where that history is today by law not even allowed to be taught, then I am implicitly accepting that these disparities are the result of individual characteristics, individual choices, and group inferiority, or a combination thereof. Be the change you wish to see in the world. Who must I become right now to create the new, just, multiracial, small d, democratic world that I dream of, in which systemic barriers to opportunity have been removed and everyone is fully enabled to thrive? I must be a vigilant observer of my own thinking and own up to when it reflects the shards of our racist past, renewing my mind from the ongoing insidious effects of our shared ugly legacy is a continuous process. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And today, not tomorrow, I must transform into an advocate for the acknowledgement and repair of the harms done to groups of people deemed less than human and deserving of a system of servitude and torture that continues to reverberate in their and our lives today. Whoever you are, wherever you are in your life's journey, you are welcome here. Come, let us worship together.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing number 1020 in the Teal hymnal, Wo-Ya-Ya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know.
Please remain standing while we say the words of our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation, and the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To seek knowledge and peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus we covenant with each other and with God.
My name is Jay Peterson. My pronouns are he and him, and I serve on your spiritual care team. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. Sharing the joys and sorrows of our lives with each other is one of the ways we embody love in this congregation. Those attending in person may share your joys and sorrows in the binder outside the doors to the sanctuary. You can also email joys and sorrows you would like shared to us at spiritualcare@unitytemple.org. If you would like to talk with somebody about what is in your heart, please feel welcome to contact the spiritual care team. We're here to listen, to sit with you in times of both joy and sorrow. Here are our joys and sorrows that were shared this week. Sybil Madison shared, "Please keep my family in your thoughts and prayers. My dear Aunt Estelle McCormick passed away unexpectedly this week. Hold them in your heart." From Ida Hellender, "Please keep my daughter Arushi Hellender in your thoughts. She was in the hospital for a week for addiction and is now in an outpatient program. She needs the structure of an entry-level job if anybody has helpful suggestions in that regard. The Maynard family has a great sorrow. Their beloved family cat, Chunks, died this week. It was a great loss for them. Hold them in your hearts. We know that we hold some joys and sorrows in silence. We invite anybody who has a joy or sorrow to come forward and drop a stone in a bowl of water at one of our 4 stations around the sanctuary. We invite you to engage in the spiritual practice of silence during this shared ritual. Let us begin.
These words of prayer are from Adam Slate. Let us unite our hearts and minds in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, spirit of love, spirit of hope, spirit of justice, sacred and holy, known by many different names. You have given us a day unique from any other. You have connected us, all of us, with each other and with the world in ways that are largely a mystery to us. You have given us little instruction other than to be present in our own lives, to feel wonder at the creations of the universe, and to love one another. You have put gifts and challenges in our paths, joys and sorrows, strengths and frailties, some of which we have already encountered and others we have yet to discover. On this unique day, may we each receive exactly what it is that we need. Amen. Blessed be. are someone who likes to come close when you're listening to a story, I invite you to come and sit down on the floor with me. Hi, Piper. Twinsies. Piper and I are shoe twinsies today. What Do You Do with an Idea? By Kobe Yamada, illustrated by May Beeson. One day, I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered. What do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I didn't know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But it followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit I felt better and happier when it was around. It wanted food. It wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger, and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid they'd think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time and that it would never become anything. And at first, I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea. I thought, no one knows it like I do, and it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it, I played with it, but most of all, I gave it my attention. My idea grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands because it said it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. Then one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my very eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just a part of me anymore. It was now a part of everything. And then I realized what you do with an idea. You change the world. The end. Okay, I'm going to send you to Unity House, all right?
Good morning. I'm Kathy Clark. Each week, Unity Temple splits the offering, with half supporting the programs and mission of our congregation and half to a community organization. This month, gun violence prevention is our Faith in Action focus, and the offering will be shared with the Institute for Nonviolence, Chicago. Their mission is to dismantle violence and build a safe, peaceful, and just Chicago. The Institute helps previously incarcerated individuals. Last year, of the 181 individuals served by their reentry program, all 181 remained out of jail. Their Peacekeepers Project monitors hotspots in neighborhoods and uses their skills in conflict resolution to prevent violence from erupting. Last year, an estimated 130 shootings were prevented because of the Peacekeepers' presence. You can give a donation by placing cash or check in one of the baskets being passed around, or you can follow one of the ways to give that are printed in the order of service. May what you bring give you joy and bring more peace to our world.
Our first reading comes from Torah Queries, weekly commentaries on the Hebrew Bible. This chapter comes from Steve Gatzlow, verse 16, which is our text for today. In this passage, Moses himself insists that everyone should have the opportunity to speak for God. If everyone has the chance to prophesy, then certainly, at least in this passage, everyone in the community can lead. Quote, prophecy is the most intimate relationship between God and humanity because God and the prophet become so close that they actually become, for a time, a single voice and spirit. In this relationship, God's spirit will actually be imbued in the words of the prophet. The full meaning of this passage, these chapters and Numbers, and this populist impulse of letting the people lead is more completely fleshed out in chapter 12, when Aaron and Miriam lead a rebellion against Moses because of his marriage to a non-Israelite, a Cushite, probably, according to scholars, a Black woman, someone very different from a traditional member of the Israelite tribe. In responding to the rebellion, the Torah states that Moses is the most humble person in the world. Moses not only would like everyone to have an intimate relationship with God, he himself is able and willing to have an intimate relationship with one of those the Torah will refer to as a stranger. The Moses of this passage seems to have no boundaries as to whom he wants to include in the spheres of his life or the life of the Israelite nation. Humility in its purest form is not a practice that mandates putting oneself down, but rather the practice of lifting everyone up to a place of equality in society and before God. Here, Moses is doing exactly that, end quote. Our second reading is Being Black and You by Maya Wade Harper. Being Black and You means watching as they put up the BLM sign and knowing the fight has hardly started. It means being coined a token and lifted up while you do all the work. Means late nights and meetings, sermons that you hope they will hear. Means answering questions that you don't want to answer and hoping it will be enough. It means asking for more diversity, but not appropriation. It means backlash and tight smiles and exhaustion. And being you and Black also means raising our hands and voting for justice while friendships warm my heart. It means feeling right at home in those walls and knowing these people understand. Means education and singing and healing and marching in the cold together. It means knowing your dream is shared by others and you can accomplish it together. Means chalices and rituals and sacred spaces, feeling welcome and loved and holy. Means supporting values that support my people's life. It means Black spaces and spending time healing with those who look like me. It means knowing inside that you belong, even if sometimes it is so hard and tiring. Hello, my name is LJ Williams. I'm a member of Unity Temple and a seminarian, and I'm so glad to be with you today. The Hebrew translation of Numbers is Bemidbar, which means in the wilderness. The English name Numbers comes from the beginning of the text, where there are a series of numbers. This 40-year period begins with an order given by God to the prophet Moses to take a census of the Israelites and all those who traveled with them out of Egypt and into liberation. There's lots of juicy discussion to be had here with thinking around who counts, why are we taking stock of those with us, and how shall we think of worthiness? Will we base model citizens off of their productivity like we experienced under empire? Or will we decide to have voices counted in a different way? The Torah tells us that they were a mixed multitude. This is important for our passage today in Numbers chapter 8, verses 1 through chapter 12, verses 16. They were not only of the tribes of Israelites, but other peoples. I imagined were trafficked into Egypt to work as domestic slaves, or other peoples who found themselves in Egypt after a war. Those who believed in the power of the slave revolt with the central message of self-determination. Those who saw the power of the plagues that swept over the land of Egypt to free them from bondage and joined in, because Egypt was an empire. For a thrilling journey through that part of the story, read Zora Neale Hurston's Moses, Man of the Mountain. So Numbers finds the people in the wilderness. They have been out of Egypt for a while, 40 years, and surviving on manna provided by God to supplement what they are able to cultivate, maybe find in the desert. Moses has been leading with the help of his siblings, Aaron and Miriam, and they do not always see eye to eye. Moses is disheartened because he's been hearing the people say they long for fruits and vegetables they ate while in Egypt. They missed that they could sometimes relax after work with family, and they weren't walking for so long, seeing nothing but endless sand dunes. It was hard, perhaps terrible in Egypt, but it was familiar. Can you imagine longing for chains? In English, we have the phrase, the devil you know over the devil you don't know. Unquestioningly, the people were enslaved in Egypt, and yet under the stars in the desert, they were free. But a revolution is a process that unfolds gradually. Advocates of revolution and not quick fixes must prepare ourselves and each other for this reality. Many of us may not see it through to its endpoint. That's the case for Moses and Miriam. In the beginning and throughout the process of making a new world for our people, it is necessary to cultivate our imaginations so that freedom becomes not a possibility, but an eventuality. Perhaps a distant eventuality, but it will come to pass. There must be interest in crafting the process of liberation together based on the material conditions of the moment, listening to as many voices as possible. This takes place over time. Elsewhere in the Torah, there are lots of examples of mandates being issued by God directly to prophets or great leaders to tell the people. It is in the wilderness, within the space of change, where traditional structures have broken down, that the opportunity for new voices to be recognized happens, as our first reading suggests. It is in the wilderness where the prophet Moses, weary of hearing complaints and having frustrating circular conversations with Aaron and Miriam, advocates for expanded leadership directly to God in only the way a favorite prophet can do. He asks for some help with governance. This turns out to be a large council of leadership to share the decision-making load on behalf of all the groups present. And I hope it included all genders. Later in chapter 12 of Numbers, the decision-making processes erupt into chaos amongst the three, again, when Moses marries an outsider, perhaps a Black woman, a Cushite. Aaron and Miriam ask each other, does God only speak to him? What about us? God overhears this, and Miriam is cursed. In my midrash, the curse happens not because she's a woman and speaks against Moses, a favorite prophet, but because Miriam suggests that a Black woman is outside of God's covenant of liberation, that she is not worthy of this journey. If this is the case, why doesn't Aaron feel God's wrath too? How can we interpret this schism of leadership that involves the direct presence of God if we don't believe in divine retribution or hell? In my imagination, it means that the people you love, the people that you are putting your life on the line for, have the ability to hurt you badly. They can disappoint you so much. And are you committed to loving them anyway? This isn't to say that we have no boundaries, that we let those we love trample all over us without any regard for our needs. It means that being in a sustained long-term relationship with a human or humans is hard and difficult. It means if we witness scenes of senseless killings of civilians for a political agenda, as we have seen unfolding in Palestine, that we call it out as it is, a genocide. Even if this statement hurts some people, we can be strong and do this because even if we only look at the past 9 months, if we put our collective heads together and it looks and feels like colonialism, then it is. Since we as a community in the wilderness can take back our narrative of what is happening before us and not what we are being told. We must be able to hold Jewish Arab, Jewish American, Muslim American, Christian Palestinians, Druze and Muslim Palestinians as lives that are all equal. We must be able to witness the multitudes that are beside us and crying out for justice. If we hold the line and say LGBTQIA plus lives are not up for debate, we love them, full stop. This is not fascism. We can say we do not hold with supremacy no matter what face it wears. There is a difference between tolerance and acceptance with popular support. It means material change, amplification from the bottom up, from the grassroots. The revolutionary Simón Bolívar, who liberated much of so-called South America from Spanish colonial rule, but fell down at the hurdle of anti-Blackness, is reported to have said that every revolution needs 3 things: money, money, and money. We must hold this with clarity. This ongoing project of liberation, this project of envisioning our freedom outside of capitalism that is held in place by white supremacy, it requires radical imagination. It takes practice to both believe and act in ways daily, knowing that the tools of the master will not save us. False urgency and shame done with the intention to wound will not help us correct our course. Small gestures of tolerance over deep listening will not give rise to the communities and congregations that we need to thrive. We must deliberately take stock, a census, if you will, of the needs and wants that are being presented to us As the poet Maya Wade Harper in our second reading so eloquently says, it means knowing your dream is shared by others and you can accomplish it together. Means chalices, rituals, and sacred spaces, feeling welcome and loved and holy. Means supporting values that support my people's life. It means Black spaces and spending time healing with those who look like me. It means knowing inside that you belong, even if sometimes it is so hard and tiring. I exist on the intersections of Black and queer, working to make the unconscious conscious, which I'll explain a bit in a minute. I've asked myself the hard questions, the questions about process. What happens when we have some real problems? What happens when we need to discuss some things that might get heated? What's the process there when we are supposed to be caring about each other at the same time? I think about this when we are engaged as Unitarian Universalists in discussions of the business of General Assembly. I feel it's my job as a seminarian and spiritual leader to make the unconscious conscious, what may be underneath the surface of hearts and minds. But making the unconscious conscious in our lives is something that we can all engage in. If our mandate is liberation, if it's our job as a faith community to spark questions and build sacred space together, if we can do this, we can bind our wounds that we got under capitalism and offer solutions, solutions that are not the status quo and are not top-down orders that we may have been used to under empire, but a secret third option. It is to remind our people that slavery back in Egypt is not a net positive, that together we create what we need rather than individual gains alone. We can dispel the confusion around our mental, material conditions. In Chicago, that is drawing on the connection between over-policing and the senseless murders of Black people by police officers. It means that high rates of unhoused people in Chicago and other US cities in the United States who happen to be Black and brown and indigenous and increasingly queer and families are not because we are lazy. It means finding the connections between environmental racism and the redlining of our neighborhoods to years of unclean water and how that leads to the untold devastation in Black children and families that destroys their lives. These are not sad twists of fate. These are conditions of capital, of our enslavement to a system that does not work for the vast majority. Where we are now does seem safer than the unknown, as Moses discovers with his complaining beloved community. However, we must truly grapple with what it means to be forced to participate and to be enamored by our bondage. We must distinguish between safety and captivity. What gives me hope is the deliberate placement of love at the center. Robust love, a love that can withstand tugging and pulling, where the questioning of our processes and not the merit of some people's existence with us is understood as wrestling with our faith. There will be tears, there will be grief, and I also hope that there is joy. As the Torah passage suggests, while we are in the wilderness building a new society and trying to figure out how not to hurt each other intentionally, that is where the growth occurs. How do you imagine these processes unfolding where you are amongst your people? How do you imagine this to unfold when Unitarian Universalists meet together? Who will we be when we get there? May we be forever curious. Amen. And Ashe.
Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 95 in the gray hymnal, There Is More Love Somewhere.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love
Our closing words are from Emily Richards. Our worship here has ended and our work has just begun. The work of holding one another and this community in love. The work of trusting that we are on the right path. The work of believing that what connects us is stronger than what separates us. The work of engaging in that which makes us whole. The work of deeper understanding and commitment. The work of letting go of that which does not serve us. The work of radical inclusion, the work of collective liberation, the work of this beloved community. A beloved community of which we are all part. A place where we are welcomed, respected, valued, cherished. A place where we belong. Please join with me in the words of our chalice extinguishing. Carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again.